Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to a brand new video here today, and welcome to another F1 2020 My Team Career Mode experiment, where today we're asking, what if we gave our team $2 billion, yeah, you heard that correctly, $2 billion, and the equivalent of R&D points as well, so 2 billion R&D points, because you have to have the money and the R&D points on this year's game. And how quickly can we upgrade our car and the facilities to max spec level 3 on all counts, you know, every department there, including marketing and personnel and the performance ones? How does that affect the R&D? How quickly will that speed things up? And how quickly can we get this car to a maxed out My Team Career Mode car? This is essentially the equivalent of the 1 million R&D points experiment I've been doing on the last two F1 games, but obviously on this year's game we have My Team Career Mode, and we have this very weird kind of dynamic of having, you know, money, actual dollars, and also R&D points. So I just went for the biggest number there for 2 billion. Pretty overkill. I don't think we're going to need anywhere near 2 billion R&D points for sure. Not too sure about dollars actually, because I don't know how large the running cost will be of everything added up, and also what the actual added up cost is of buying all the HQ parts, but I feel like 2 billion should be safe. You would like to think so, even in the real world of Formula 1. So if you go on to enjoy the video, be sure to smash that like button, but let's get into this. You can see at Moneybags Grand Prix, we've chosen the best engine we can get in the game as it stands right now, the Ferrari, and also the most expensive, but it's not like we have an issue with cash flow, as you can clearly see on the top right there, confirming we have $2 billion, which actually quite nicely just rounds to 2B in the game, but then 2 billion R&D points, for some reason the game doesn't like to round it up and just put the word M or B, so it showed the entireties there. So just kind of confirmation there that there actually is 2 billion R&D, but we will not be getting anywhere near using all of that up. I mean, last year on F1 2019 and 2018, we didn't even get near using all the 1 million R&D points, let alone 2 billion. It's just overkill on the R&D points, but I just thought it, for the sake of the title and everything, just to match it for, you know, the dollars and the R&D points, I'll just do the same. But it does look a little bit ridiculous. The game's not ready for it, obviously, but if you're familiar with what goes on here now with all this money, all this R&D, well, we just splurged the cash at the very start here. R&D wise, our team is about halfway on the R&D chart due to the answers I gave in the interviews. I guess that means quite a lot. I actually didn't realize that. So it's sort of level pegging with Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri right now as the kind of, you know, middle way, third worst team, fourth worst team on the grid. But now that we've obviously got unlimited supply, essentially, of R&D points and money, you can see there I basically just went ahead and bought every single upgrade on the engine, chassis, aero, and durability that I could. At this stage, of course, our HQ facilities are not upgraded yet, so I can't do any simultaneous upgrades, and the build time is still the longest it ever will be in the game. But we have to obviously go ahead and spend that money, so there's no point kind of dawdling and wasting time. We may as well buy those R&D upgrades straight away. But speaking about HQ upgrades then, we're going to go ahead, and you're about to see, we're just going to cycle through every single HQ, and I'm not even thinking about how much it is. I'm just double tapping A there on my controller and buying it all, even the really expensive marketing, you know, ones that were like, what was it, like 12 million or 10 million at the start of the game. You know, in my normal My Team Career Mode series, that seemed like such a big amount of money to spend. For us, it's gonna hardly scratch the surface. I mean, we're not even down to 1.9, lower than that, 1.9 billion, so it really isn't anything to us. In the pre-season activities, don't need to worry about choosing any activities that get us more money, because why not? I mean, we've got all the money in the world basically, and even R&D points. So basically I'm just going for the acclaim levels of our teammate and our driver and the team essentially to drive that forward. But you can see how ridiculous it looks on the left hand side now. We have too many upgrades for the page to even display it properly on the activity timeline. But as we go on through pre-season, it's just a wall of green and green and green as all the HQs get upgraded. I'm sure we've got many people on site building these things. You know, there's not going to be an issue with employing too many builders for us. Obviously, we can just chuck money at it and it can all come through. So we've already got it up to spec level 1 pretty much for every single part of the HQ, and so we can start to delve into more of the tree, essentially. There is going to be a bit of a bottleneck with the aero chassis, you can see, because we have to actually get through to that next stage of the R&D tree, whereas the engine side, actually, I can start diving in straight away, because there's only one level of the tree, if you can see what I mean, whereas with the chassis, we'll be bottlenecked a little bit. We're going to have to wait for us to kind of delve really deep into the tree before we can start doing a lot of simultaneous upgrades, which will obviously come through as we do the fabrication of the HQs, and obviously as we upgrade every single part of the HQ, the build time gets decreased, so the upgrades take shorter and shorter to do, and also at the same time the failure rates will decrease. We come through with the car reveal. I've just chosen the kind of gold Michael Schumacher livery because I thought, you know, we've got all this money, you know, if we had this much money, I feel like our team would go to the effort of, you know, gold wrapping the car, even though it wouldn't make any sense. It'd weigh down the car maybe. I feel like we've got too much money to care about that. We'd just use gold foil leaf and just wrap the entire car in that and have a very bougie car, as it were. But we continue to go on. We're still in pre-season, by the way, and we've still got all this ridiculousness of the HQs coming in to spec level 2. You can see there on a lot of the facilities. And just before we get through to Australia, we do have spec level 2 on every single department, and the chassis one is actually pending on spec level 3 because of the answers I gave at the interviews. We actually, you know, started with a little bit of an advantage on the chassis side. R&D wise, we're actually still not too deep into the tree, so you can see it's very easy in the game to spend money in dollars on the HQ, but it's still quite difficult to spend the R&D points. You still have to wait, and you do get bottlenecked by the shape of the tree. But finally, before we even get to the first race of this season, we're able to finally buy the upgrades for spec level 3 and the other parts. Like I said, we've already got the chassis one pending, but now we've got everything going. So literally now our job is done in terms of spending actual money on the team, because everything is now pending. It's just a case of waiting for those upgrades to come in, but then we'll have spec level 3 and everything, which I'm very excited about because I've not even seen spec level 3, what the kind of vistas in the menus look like for every single one. Obviously, I've seen the personnel one because we did that training the worst driver to 100 overall video, and so we saw the personnel one, but yet to see what the kind of other HQs look like, so that'll be quite interesting. But we're now going to move on into the Australian Grand Prix, and just like we did on previous games, we're going to simulate the races to just give us an inkling of what the game feels like, where the car's going to be and where it places our AI. And you can see at the moment in the first race, Schumacher gets P17. He qualified P17, so actually stayed put there. And from 22nd place, our AI apparently simulated up to P13, so not too bad actually. So already maybe seeing some benefits of the car slightly improving, because we did do a few upgrades that definitely wouldn't have been all possible if we didn't have those extra R&D points, of course. So it has made a difference at the first race somewhat, I feel, but obviously we're still yet to really unleash the full potential of having this much money in our R&D, and we're still actually waiting on those Spec 3 upgrades. You can see on the activity timeline, there's actually such a short gap from Australia to Bahrain that we're going to have to wait one more race till those Spec 3 upgrades come in. But at this stage, you know, we're at $1.59 billion, so we've spent a lot of money. We've got very high running costs. You know, we're at 250k per week of running costs. That'll go up to, I think, 500k, I think, once we get to level 3, and obviously just the outright money we're spending on the upgrades actually adds up. So I was surprised, actually. I thought we maybe wouldn't even scratch the surface of the 2 billion, but to get down to nearly 1.5 billion, I guess is, you know, shows you at least need to have, you know, a decent amount of millions in your bank to actually get everything. So over the course of your career, it all probably adds up a little bit, but probably still nowhere near even 1 billion, to be fair. But obviously, I just thought I'd go overkill for the sake of the drama. But we continue to still buy some upgrades. Not too many at this stage. We're still now getting bottlenecked by the aero chassis and even the engine now, because we've pretty much hit the wall of now we're playing a waiting game of these upgrades to come in. But looking at the R&D chart, just going to Australia, you can see we did make a good upward trajectory to try and close up to Racing Point and Renault there on the R&D chart, and imagine now going after the Bahrain Grand Prix, that's where we'll start to rapidly improve. Talking about the Bahrain Grand Prix, we actually improve our results, both of us. We come home in P11 there, and Mick Schumacher comes through in P14, so actually tangibly, the car is being simulated and is being shown. It does have improvements there for us to go better. You know, we're only one place off points paying positions, which is where I was in my real career mode with me driving. So even the simulation, away from this experiment, looks like the simulation in this game is a lot better in terms of it's not so harsh or trying to force you to drive. It's genuinely giving you a good simulated kind of result of where you would have maybe come compared to your teammates. So I kind of like that on this year's game. So you could actually legit play this game just without even driving the game base. You could play as like a simulated manager game if you wanted to. But like I said, after the Bahrain Grand Prix, that's where our full list of upgrades on the HQ are going to come in. At this stage, there are some failures. As I said, there are going to be, you know, the failure rate gets reduced, but it's not like a guarantee that every upgrade comes in every single time. So there will be a few little stumbling blocks here and there, but there's that final wall of green, Spec level 3. It's just glorious to see it. But that is it then. That is actually us done for spending dollars in this game, because obviously we don't need to worry about, you know, teammate salary, whatever, you know, signing a new teammate. We've not even got to that stage yet. Sponsors we don't need to worry about because we've got all the money in the world, so we can just sit here and enjoy the HQs, and all we're worrying about now is the R&D. So this almost turns back into the old-fashioned 1 million R&D point experiment video we did on F1 2019 and 18, because the money now doesn't even come into bearing. As I said, it's very easy and you know, and quick for you to spend money in this game versus the R&D, because there's no bottleneck. But as I've been talking about that, hopefully you've been watching on the video and seen all the lovely new vistas we've got with the HQs, all Spec level 3. So we got that very fancy aero wind tunnel, the durability's now got a rolling road and whatnot. The engine facilities look banging now. It's not longer like a garage with just an engine and like a little crane over it. Got a proper facility there. So looking very, very bougie, I must say, like I said about the car as well. So this is where we now just skip through and try and get as many R&D upgrades as we can on the car. And it's already making an effect, to be fair. We're at the third race, remember, Hanoi, the Vietnam Grand Prix, and the game is simulating ourselves up into P6, having started in 22nd place, remember. Every single race, I'm starting in 22nd place, and the game is simulating it up to me, up to P6. So that's already showing how good the car is at this stage compared to our competitors, maybe. Schumacher, they're obviously a little bit lower rated. You know, he's our F2 teammate, so he's not doing as well as us, but he's still right up there, P12, so pretty decent. As we go on after the Vietnam Grand Prix, now we're already halfway through the engine side of the tree. So that's one thing I did notice. It seems like the engine on the My Team career mode is very, you know, you can get through it quite quickly in comparison to last year's game where you were obviously driving as a real F1 team. You know, every department was quite, you know, equally matched with bottlenecks, but the engine seems to be quite easy to get through on this year's game. Makes sense because there's less upgrades to technically do, because obviously we've lost the manual ERS, so there's less upgrades to maybe do in theory that the game wants to let you do, basically. But at this stage of our career process then, we're about a third of the way through the chassis tree and the aero, half, like I said, of the engine side. But where we stand in terms of compared to the other teams as it stands after the third race, we're already the second best team on the grid. You can see that upward trajectory looks ridiculous from Hanoi to Shanghai. So that was, you know, the magic click, obviously. That's when we got the Spec level 3 HQ in, and as soon as that was there, it unlocked a world of possibilities. There was so much room for activities, and we're able to just, you know, blow up basically and go straight past Red Bull Racing and Ferrari. So I suspect already we'll now be seeing a great result at Shanghai. And speaking of that, we'll move through to the simulated result, and we are in P3 now. So for the first time, we've been simulated to a podium from last place on the grid. Our teammate Schumacher in P7 from P6 on the grid. So making very good progress, very rapid progress, and the progress continues. As you can see, a wall of R&D still. We're still going on and purchasing everything we can, slowly chipping away our way through the chassis and aero side of things, and we continue to chip away, but we're still not even just about halfway through the aero side and the chassis side of the tree, which is quite crazy to me, because we moved to the next GP, the Dutch GP at Zandvoort, and we are now already the best car on the grid. We are comfortably ahead of Mercedes on the R&D chart. You know, we've got now a gap to Mercedes that Mercedes had to the rest of the cars that have been in the game. If that, even more, actually. We're pretty much the midfield length ahead of Mercedes now, and we've obviously got more upgrades pending. So now it's no surprise to me that we simulate this session and we're now getting a 1-2. So for the first time now, the fifth race of the season, and the game is simulating our car and ourselves moving from 22nd place to first. Schumacher was on pole position. He's moved out to second place. So that's just the kind of difference in the teammate, obviously. And once we sign a better teammate, maybe he'll, challenge us for P1. But now we're at that stage where it's the home run. We're now never going to not get a 1-2 no matter what. And at the same time, we're continuing to plow on upgrades. And the litmus test for how good this car is going to be this next Grand Prix. Monaco, obviously, very hard to pass. Street circuit, we see on this year's game especially as well, the AI is so hard to pass. But what will the simulation tell us? We continue to make upgrades, and so we head on towards the Monaco Grand Prix with an even better car than the one we had at Zandvoort, and the game simulates us in first place from 20 seconds. So it reckons our car's that quick that even on the streets of Monaco, we can easily navigate back up into first place. Schumacher gets P2 from pole position there. So our car's basically, our car's Formula 1, and the rest of the grid now is like Formula 2 or Formula B. That's the difference we have on the car. But we're not done there. The entire grid's already dead, but we're going to continue to just pile on the pressure, pile on the punches, and keep on improving the car, trying to get towards that coveted, maxed out My Team career mode car. It takes a few races, I will admit. So we go through the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, the Canadian Grand Prix, all the way through to the French Grand Prix, but those final upgrades then come in on the aero and the chassis side of the car, and we finally achieve the maxed out car in F1 2020 My Team career mode. So there it is in all its glory. That is what the My Team career tree looks like, all maxed out. You can see the engine side is a little bit lighter than the aero and chassis, but every single upgrade's done, apart from, I will say, you can see the grayed out, not shiny, small upgrades that are naturally occurring from the engine department. So that's something we would have to wait for Ferrari to give us those upgrades at the very end of the season. So naturally speaking, there's still maybe one or two little bit engine power upgrades to come in, but everything else that we can control, we've maxed out. So this is pretty much the nearest we're going to get to maxed out. Obviously, I can wait further down the season. That'll be the fully ever maxed out car you're going to get. But just look at how ridiculous this is on the R&D tree. It's so much so that it's even hard to see a gradient difference in the rest of the grid. Like, look at the start of the grid at Australia and then where they are now. And it's now pretty much, they all look like they're flat lines, because compared to our progress, they are flat lines. Because now, if you took the entire fuel spread of the grids, we are now double that and some more. Like, you could fit the entire grid spread from Mercedes to Williams on top of Mercedes, and you're still not going to get to where our car is. So pretty much they're like the equivalent of, like, I don't know, like sports cars or GT racing in like an LMP1, and we're like the LMP1 class almost in like a multi-class F1 season, if it was to ever come to that. So yeah, it looks pretty crazy, and to be fair, it's not so crazy we've got to that point this quickly. Remember, on F1 2018 and 19, I think it took us at least the whole season on 2019, and then I think it took us a season and a bit for us to do on 2018. So every year it seems like you can go quicker and quicker to max car. Obviously on this year's game it's different because you've got those HQs that you can buy outright if you have the money for it. So that definitely helps so much, because you saw as soon as we got Spec level 3 from Hanoi, the third race, that's where the kind of inflection point began of us just rapidly upgrading. But this is definitely the fastest I've ever got to a maxed out car in this sort of experiment. But then of course the final thing, obviously I know some of you will be wanting to see that as well, is maybe signing a better teammate. Now for some reason the game glitched a little bit and did not allow me to approach Hamilton. It said my car performance was P7 and he wanted third or above, even though very much so we're the best team on the grid. So it glitched out a little bit there. I don't know why, but we went to the next best thing, I guess. Max Verstappen, he was all good to be signed, so we just chuck all the money at him in the world. I just spammed that, higher bid button against Red Bull, and we're able to sign Max Verstappen to our car. So we've got one of the fastest drivers in the game, in the best car, the best car on the grid, the maxed out My Team car, and that is where I rub my hands and say that is where my job is done. That is where the work is done. So guys, if you did enjoy the experiment of asking, what if we had $2 billion and R&D in My Team career mode, then be sure to smash the like button, and that is what happens. We're able to get the max car at just under the halfway mark of the season, which is just insanity to me. And if you guys want to see me drive this car in a race and see how ridiculous it is compared to the other cars, then be sure to let me know in the comments below. Hit that like button, get subscribed for that if you're new around here. But I've been aarava. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the day. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.